Hey guys, it's David with Cars and Code. Today I want to talk a little bit about camber. So first, what exactly is camber? Well, camber is just the angle at which the tire is with the rest of the body. So I'm going to throw a picture up on the screen because a picture is probably the best way to explain this, because it's kind of hard to explain. But pretty much if you see this picture in front of you, the top of the tires are pointed in towards the car, and the bottom of the tires are kind of pointed out towards the bottom of the car, or away from the car. So that's what camber is just when the wheels there have an angle with the rest of the car. So there's kind of two types of camber, even though it's really the same thing. The first is positive camber, where the car, or the wheels are pointed out away from the car. So the tops of the wheels are pointed out away, and then negative camber is where the wheels are actually pointed into the car, kind of like how you can see in that picture. So let's go over a few different terms before we talk a little bit more about what camber is or how it actually works. So first we have static and dynamic camber. Static camber is the camber that you have when you first set up your car. So if it's just sitting in the garage or on a parking lot or anything like that, static camber is just how you set it up. Dynamic camber, on the other hand, is what the car is, what the camber on the car currently is at a certain point in time. So if the wheels have changed camber from their default original values to something new, then that's your dynamic camber. Just the instantaneous point in time is your dynamic camber. So that's really the main difference there. It's the same thing, just dynamic camber is changed from your default setting. So how can then the dynamic camber change? Like what causes the dynamic camber to change? And there's really two main reasons for that. The first is called camber gain. Now, camber gain is something that happens when you turn the wheels. So, for example, I'm going to show a picture of a Jeep on the screen there. You can see how in this Jeep, the left tire there has a lot of positive camber. The wheel is pointed out away from the rest of the car because the wheel is turned real far to the left. So that's what positive camber is, or what camber gain is. Now, camber intake is the second way camber can change, and that's done when the suspension travels. Right? So let's say we're driving along and we go over a speed bump. And let's say just our left wheel goes over the speed bump, our right wheel just continues on like normal. Well, camber intake means that when your left wheel goes up into the air over the speed bump, the camber on it is going to change. So a good example of this is when we're going over a turn, or going through a turn. Let's say we're taking a hard left turn, and then we look at the load on the wheels. So the right wheel is going to become real loaded up because of our left turn, the inertia of the car is going over. The left wheel is getting unloaded, so there's not going to be as much weight on it. So that means the right wheel is going to be lifted up towards the car, and the left wheel is going to kind of fall out away from the car. And that can cause the camber to change via camber intake. Now, both camber gain and camber intake are designed, right? So you design your suspension to do this stuff. It's not something that just naturally happens. It's all designed. Right? So the last term we're going to talk about before we talk about how we're going to actually be using camber is called camber force. Now, camber force is going to be pretty much, we're going to simplify it here a little bit and say that camber force is going to be the direction the wheel pushes the car based on the angle it has. Right? So if a wheel is tilted left, then it's going to push the car to the left side. So let's say we have two wheels that are, the right wheel is pointed left into the car, the left wheel is pointed right into the car. They're pushing against each other, and the net result is 0. But let's say we're on a bike, right? And if you've noticed, bikers don't have to turn the wheel as much as you do in a car. To make it around the same turn in a car as a bike, you have to turn the wheels a lot more. And this is due to camber force. Now when the biker leans over to make the turn, they're using the camber force of the wheel to push them left and complete the turn. So that's all camber force is when a wheel is tilted, it pushes the wheel in that direction. Now, that's really all the terms we need to understand. So let's jump into how we use camber and its effects on a car. So first, let's do a little pro-con list. First, let's go over all the cons. So if you think about it, when you have wheels tilted like that, they're going to have a lot smaller contact patch with the ground. So let's say the wheels are tilted in, we got some negative camber going on, the car is going to be driving on the inside of the wheels, and that's going to wear out a lot faster, right? Because all the weight is just going to be right on the inside of the wheels, and there's going to be no other weight on the wheels other than there. It's gonna wear out. So it makes the tire wear out a lot faster. The other thing camber can do that's not so good is, again, has to do with that contact patch. If the contact patch is smaller, that means you have less grip in a straight line. So let's say we're trying to accelerate real hard in a drag race or something like that, then when we hit the gas, we have a lot smaller contact patch with the ground, and we're not going to have as much grip to accelerate. Similarly, if we're driving in a straight line, we have less contact patch to brake, right? So same thing there. You have less grip because you have a smaller contact patch. Now, with those cons, we actually do get a pretty big pro to having camber, and that's a lot better grip and handling through a corner. So let's say, for example, we're going around a left turn. That means the right wheel is going to get loaded up, and it's going to have a lot more weight on it than the left wheel. Now, if our left wheel has a lot of positive camber, then I don't know where I just turned. If the right wheel has a lot less camber, or a lot of negative camber, then the camber force that we're talking about, or the camber thrust, is going to be much. It's going to be pushing the car to the left. Whereas the left wheel that's angled towards the right side isn't going to have as much of force on it because it's so much smaller weight on the car, because the right tire is the one that's loaded up. So that camber force, or the camber thrust, is going to be pushing the car to the left. In addition to that, our camber is going to help our contact patch with the ground on a turn. So let's say, again, we're making that left turn. Our right wheel is going to get pushed up against by the car, and I'll throw a little diagram on the screen to make it a little easier to understand. But that pushing by the car onto the wheel, and the wheel's contact with the ground, is going to cause it to kind of flatten out. It's going to warp the tire a little bit. So those are really the two main reasons why you use camber in the turns. Is one, you get the camber thrust, the camber force, and second, when you're turning, it gets a lot bigger contact patch with the ground, which gives you more grip through the corner. So those are really the two main plus sides to camber. And if you look at a race car, like a Formula 1 car or something like that, then you can actually see that most of them do run negative camber for that reason. But if you start looking at like road cars and such, then having a negative camber might not be such a good idea. Obviously, because tire wear, you want tire wear to be as good as possible on a road car, because you don't want to be buying new tires all the time. But also because you really don't need cornering force on a car. You really want more of the straight line acceleration and braking, right? So if you're in an emergency situation and you want to hit the brakes, you want to have as much grip as possible to be able to brake as fast as possible. So generally on street cars, you get a real small or camber or no camber, because that's the best way to do it. Now this is obviously going to depend on a certain car. right? So if you have a heavier car, it might be different, or more inflated tires, or more rigid tires, or anything like that. It's going to be a lot. It's going to make a lot difference. So there's really no right answer for what's the ideal amount of camber to have. Right? It's going to depend on the car that you have. So with that said, there's some other cool aspects to camber that I'm kind of glossing over. Like, let's say, for example, in Formula 1, you're trying to decide how much camber you want on your car in Formula 1. Well, it's not just that mechanical grip we're talking about and trying to keep that contact patch and all that kind of stuff. There's other factors that go into those decisions. Like, for example, aerodynamics. If we set up our aerodynamics on our car, we want them obviously to be good as possible, so we put them through a wind tunnel and model it on the computer. But when we do those things, we just have to assume a certain camber for the car. So let's say, negative 5% camber, degrees camber, something like that. We put it through the simulator and figure out how much camber, or how to do all the aerodynamics. So that's so when we do that, that's going to influence our decision on how much camber to put on the car. Because if we put too much camber on, then that's going to kind of mess up all the aerodynamics for the car. So we want to, when we're making the decision on how much camber we want, we also want to be paying attention to aerodynamics and stuff like that. In addition to that, when you're thinking about like Formula 1 cars, you have to worry about overheating. If you have a lot of camber, all of your weight is going to be right on that same patch on the tire. So if you have a lot of heat going into that small little area, it's going to be overheating very, very easily. So the inside of the tire might be really hot and the outside of the tire might be really cold, and that's going to lead to blistering and other things that you don't want with an overheated tire. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, leave a comment below, give me a thumbs up, definitely subscribe. Other than that, I hope all you guys have a great day, and I will see you later.